Winterfell's snow had just begun to melt when the royal procession arrived. The banners of the lion and stag waved proudly, announcing the king's presence. Inside the halls of Winterfell, Eddard Stark stood tall, his face calm but his heart uneasy. It had been years since he saw Robert Baratheon, his old friend, now king of the Seven Kingdoms. But time changes men. And Robert had changed. Robert entered the hall with laughter on his lips, but weariness in his eyes. He embraced Ned with rough affection and greeted Catelyn kindly. Though his words were clumsy, the feast that followed was grand, with music, wine, and meat. But the next morning, Robert asked Ned to walk with him in the crypts, the place where secrets tend to wake. Down there, surrounded by the cold stone of past Starks, Robert made his request. "I need you, Ned. I need you to be the Hand. Jon Arryn is dead, and I don't trust the Vipers in King's Landing." His voice was desperate, not commanding. He was a king tired of shadows. But Ned didn't answer right away. He spoke slowly. "I am honored, Robert, but I must speak with Catelyn, and I must understand more before I take such a burden." This time, he didn't agree just out of loyalty. He had learned over the years that rushing into decisions only leads to blood. Robert respected that. He nodded, though he clearly wished Ned would say yes and leave with him at once. That evening, Ned sat with Catelyn near the fire. She held his hand, her eyes thoughtful. "Jon Arryn's death worries me," she said. "And now Lysa's letter, saying the Lannisters killed him. If you go to King's Landing, you must go with caution. But I also think maybe you shouldn't go at all." Ned frowned. "If I don't go, Robert will send someone else, someone worse. But if I go and fall into their games, I may not return. We must find another way." Catelyn looked at him and whispered, "Then let's not go alone. Let's bring truth with us." They decided something different that night. Instead of rushing south, they would delay the king's departure. Ned secretly sent trusted men to the Vale to speak with Lysa Arryn, to know for sure if Jon was murdered. At the same time, he asked Maester Luwin to gather all letters and reports from King's Landing and the Vale. Knowledge was their first sword. But the greatest change came the next day. Catelyn requested an audience with Queen Cersei, a bold move. Robert frowned when he heard it, but allowed it. In the solar, the two women sat. Cersei wore her golden pride-like armor, but Catelyn didn't flinch. "My lady," Catelyn said, "I don't trust whispers. I want truth. My husband is loyal to your husband. We do not wish war. But I will not send him to King's Landing until I know what danger waits there." Cersei narrowed her eyes. "You dare accuse my family?" Catelyn smiled, softly but firm. "I don't accuse, I ask. And if your family is not guilty, then help us uncover the real enemy." That moment shifted something in Cersei, a crack in her pride. Perhaps it was the calm honesty in Catelyn's words. Perhaps she saw a chance to protect her own children from war. Whatever it was, she didn't attack. Instead, she left in silence. Later that night, Robert came to Ned's chamber, his face red with drink. "You always were the careful one, Ned. But maybe that's what we need. Fine, we'll wait. A few days, but no more." Those few days were all they needed. A raven came from the Vale. Lysa had agreed to speak, but not through letters. She invited Ned and Catelyn both. Alone, without guards, to prove trust, Ned prepared for the journey. But this time, he wasn't going as the king's hand. He was going as a brother, a father, and a man who wanted peace, not war. What none of them knew was that in those hidden days of delay, a chain of violence that once led to the fall of kingdoms was slowly being broken. The road to the Vale was long and bitter. Even in early spring, snow still clung to the north like a stubborn memory. Ned and Catelyn rode in a small company, Only trusted guards, Maester Lewin, and a few of Rob's men. Bran had been injured, yes, but in this story, there had been no attempt on his life, because Catelyn had never left him alone, because the Lannisters hadn't yet been pushed too far. As they passed through the neck, Ned rode in silence, thoughts buried deep. Catelyn, sharp as ever, noticed the way he gripped the reins harder than needed. "You don't trust this," she said quietly. "I don't trust the world anymore," he replied. But the truth was, Ned Stark wasn't scared of war. He was scared of being wrong, of seeing the truth too late, of getting caught in a trap that might cost him his family. When they reached the Bloody Gate, the Vale welcomed them cautiously. Sir Vardis Egen met them with a cold bow. But Lysa's summons had been clear. They were led into the Eyrie without fanfare, without the climb, the narrow steps, the winds. They were a reminder that power in the Vale was always hard to reach and easy to fall from. Lysa Arryn stood by her son's side when they entered the High Hall, but she was not the woman Catelyn remembered. Her face was pale and tight, her eyes darting constantly. "Ned, Catelyn," she greeted, but her voice was strained. "We came for truth, Lysa," Catelyn said gently, "not for judgment." Ned stepped forward. "You wrote that Jon was murdered, that the Lannisters—" "Yes," she snapped. "They killed him. He found something he wasn't supposed to know. Something about the Queen and her brother." She stopped herself, eyes flickering toward her maids. The High Hall was full of ears. Later, in a more private chamber, Lysa spilled the rest. Jon found out the truth about Cersei and Jaime. Their children, none of them are Robert's. He was going to tell the king, and that's why they poisoned him. Catelyn gasped. Ned sat still. "If this is true," he said slowly, "then Robert must know." "No," Lysa cried. "He'll go mad. He'll kill Cersei. War will break out. You must keep him calm." But Ned wasn't thinking of war. He was thinking of Jon Arryn, the honorable man who'd raised him like a son, dead in silence, poisoned in peace. The next day, Ned wrote a letter, not to Robert, but to Sir Barristan Selmy, a man still loyal to the idea of honor in King's Landing. In the letter, Ned asked for quiet confirmation, a small thing, a name, a healer, a whisper of truth about Jon Arryn's final days. And then Ned and Catelyn made the choice that would save Westeros from the fires of war. They returned to Winterfell, not King's Landing. Robert was furious when they arrived. He had almost left without them. But when Ned told him the truth face to face, Robert didn't scream. He didn't rage. He froze. "My children?" he asked, voice like a dying candle. "Not mine." Catelyn stood beside Ned and said softly, "This doesn't need to be blood. It needs to be truth. Let's confirm it, then act." Robert drank the whole night, but he didn't call for war. Not yet. Instead, he asked Ned to ride with him, to visit each of his children one by one, to look into their eyes, to know for himself. So they did. Ned, Robert, and Sir Barristan travelled in secret to Dragonstone, where Stannis waited. And there, another secret came to light. Stannis knew. He had known for a long time. He told them about the rumors, the book Jon Arryn had read, about the Baratheon line, their black hair, and how all of Cersei's children had none. It was too much. But Robert didn't raise an army. He raised a plan. He called for Cersei to meet him in Storm's End with her children. No court, no council, just family. Cersei came, but not alone. Jaime rode with her. The tension was sharp enough to cut air. "You summoned us like criminals," she spat. "I summoned you like a husband," Robert said coldly, "and a father who needs to know." The meeting ended in cold silence. But before Cersei left, she said something she never had before. "I loved you once, she whispered. But they never let me choose. Robert looked at her, and for the first time he saw her, not as queen, not as traitor, but as a woman trapped in the same cage he had built around himself. He let her go. He let the children go. He told Ned that night, "I won't be remembered as a butcher. I'll fix this, Ned. We'll fix it." And just like that, the fire was contained, but the sparks hadn't died. In the shadows, someone else had been watching, listening. Littlefinger. He smiled as he heard the news, because peace, didn't serve men like him. The skies above King's Landing were clear, but the city itself felt uneasy. Whispers were spreading. Not shouted in the streets, not yet, but in brothels, council chambers, and the silk-draped rooms where secrets were sold. Lord Petier Baelish, Littlefinger to most, stood by his window in the Red Keep, swirling a cup of Arbor gold, smiling like he knew something no one else did, because he did. He knew that Robert Baratheon hadn't returned straight to the capital after his journey. He knew Ned Stark and Catelyn were pulling strings in the shadows, working quietly with the Aerie, Dragonstone, and now, even Old Town. He knew Cersei was shaken, though she would never admit it, and he knew something else too, something dangerous. If they avoid war, he said softly to himself, they also avoid opportunity. Littlefinger thrived on chaos. War was just a tool, a ladder, and peace meant power stayed where it was, with the great families, the old names, the people who never invited him in. No, peace would not last. So Petier began to stir the pot. First, he sent whispers to the right ears that Ned Stark was gathering houses in secret, that the Starks were building alliances with the Vale, the Reach, and even the Targaryen loyalists in exile, that Robert was acting strangely, avoiding council meetings, ignoring matters of coin. "Is the king ill?" he asked innocently at the small council table, or simply distracted. Varys watched him closely. "You're digging again, Petier. You'll find something sharp, I imagine." "Oh, I always do," Littlefinger smiled. Then he planted a letter, unsigned, unmarked, that found its way into the hands of Tywin Lannister. It spoke of Robert's doubts, his plans to name Ned not just Hand but Protector of the Realm, to name his own children illegitimate, to disinherit House Lannister from power. That wasn't true, not yet, but it would be. And Tywin Lannister was not a man who waited to be cornered. Far to the west in Castle Rock, the lions stirred. Meanwhile, in Winterfell, things were shifting too. Robb Stark had begun taking more responsibility with his father, gone so often. He wasn't a boy anymore. He trained harder, spoke firmer, and began sitting in on small councils. The people of the north saw it. The young wolf rising. Bran had healed slowly, but he was walking with aid now. He had strange dreams of three-eyed ravens, of whispering trees, but he kept them mostly to himself. Maester Luwin told him dreams were just dreams. Arya trained in secret with a new sword, Needle, a gift from Jon Snow before he'd left for the war. But in this version of events, Arya wasn't wild and alone. She had Catelyn watching her, guiding her with quiet strength. Sansa was the one most changed. With no promise of marriage to Joffrey, she no longer clung to fantasies of being queen. Instead, she watched, listened. She saw how men made decisions and how women were expected to smile through them, and slowly she began to resent it. But the true storm was gathering in King's Landing. Robert returned at last, his eyes heavier but clearer. He summoned the small council, Varys, Renly, Pycelle, Littlefinger, and Ned, and spoke plainly. "I know the truth about Cersei, about her children, and I know the danger it brings." He looked at Ned. "But I will not start a war over this. Not yet. I will speak with Tywin, in person, and if he resists, then we strike." The council was stunned. Even Renly looked nervous. "You'll give him warning?" Pycelle croaked. "I'll give him a chance," Robert growled. "That's more than he'd give me." But Littlefinger, he just smiled, because that was the moment he had waited for. That pause, that hesitation, that chance to strike first. He left the chamber early that day, claiming coin matters. But what he did instead was write another raven, this time to Cersei. It simply read, "He knows. He waits. Tywin must not." By the next week, Lannister riders were mobilizing in the west. Ned received word of skirmishes near the Riverlands. Not open war, but testing the waters. Tywin was probing, searching for weakness. The Tullys were watching closely. In the north, ravens flew faster than ever. Messages between Winterfell, the Vale, the Reach, and even Dorne. Lines of communication that hadn't existed for decades were now being spun like a quiet web. Then came the final move. Joffrey vanished from King's Landing. Vanished. Some said he was taken to Casterly Rock for protection. Others said he ran, fearing Robert's wrath. But the truth, only Cersei and Jaime knew. Ned and Robert stood together on the ramparts of the Red Keep the night they got the news. "He's hiding the boy," Robert muttered. "She's planning something." Ned said nothing at first. Then, after a long pause, he looked at his old friend and said, "Robert, it's begun. The war you tried to stop." Robert turned to him, jaw clenched. "Then we end it. Fast. Clean. With honor." But in Westeros, nothing was ever clean, and honor was always the first to bleed. The ravens screamed across the skies of Westeros. From the Riverlands to the north, from King's Landing to the Vale, messages flew like daggers, and each one carried a silent warning. The Lannisters had begun to move. It started with fire. A Tully outpost on the western border was attacked by riders bearing no banners, but every survivor swore they saw a lion's sigil beneath the flames. The assault wasn't war, not yet, but it was a declaration. Tywin Lannister never sent threats. He sent messages with blood. At the Red Keep, Robert slammed his fist on the council table when word reached him. "He wants to test me," he growled. "He thinks I've gone soft. We give him one warning. One. Then we ride." But Ned shook his head. "He's not listening anymore, Robert. He's reacting. He thinks you've turned on his daughter. He thinks this is revenge." "And is it?" Robert asked bitterly. "Because if I see Jaime Lannister again, I swear by the gods You'll start the war we've all tried to stop," Ned finished for him. "We need strategy now, not anger." It was true. They had tried to avoid it, but Littlefinger had seen to that. War wasn't something he feared. It was something he needed. Chaos was his ladder. And already he had begun climbing. In the background, he stirred discontent in the council. He whispered to Renly about Robert's growing instability. He told Varys the king was acting too slowly. He hinted to Pycelle that perhaps Stannis should rule instead, and then he did something worse. He forged a letter supposedly from Catelyn Stark to her brother Edmure Tully, calling for a preemptive strike against Lannister lands. The ink was fresh, the seal perfect, and when the Lannisters received it, by accident of course, they took it as proof. And so Tywin gave the order. Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer, rode out with 500 men. They didn't wear lion sigils. They didn't need to. The Golden Lions of Casterly Rock didn't ask questions when their bloodline was threatened. Back in Winterfell, Robb received the news before his father did. A raven from Riverrun. Lannister forces approaching the Trident. War has begun. He stood still, fists clenched, heart bracing. "We need to march," he told Greatjaw Number, "but not alone. Not yet." Robb wrote a letter to his father. then another to the Vale. He called for bannermen not to fight, but to stand ready, because if the south burned, the north would not be next. Meanwhile, far to the north, Jon Snow was seeing something far worse than war. At the wall, things had changed. Rangers were vanishing. Wildlings were on the move. And one night, while on a night watch, Jon heard something in the forest that didn't belong. It wasn't a wolf, or a man, or even a shadow. It was silence, the kind that swallowed light, ghost, growled low in his throat. Fur standing on end, Jon stepped forward, hand on his sword. When he saw it, a pale blue light in the woods. Eyes, cold, inhuman. A thing moved, and the trees groaned like they knew it wasn't meant to be there. Jon didn't wait. He ran back to the wall, heart pounding like war drums. He reported it the next morning, but the men of the Night's Watch laughed. All the boys saw was moonlight on snow. One ranger chuckled. But Lord Commander J.O. Mormont didn't laugh. He stared at Jon and said only, "Keep watching." Back in King's Landing, Robert summoned Cersei one last time. They met privately. No guards, no swords. "I know you think I hate you," Robert said slowly. "But I hate what this has become more. You made it this way," she hissed. "You drank and fought and fucked your way through half the kingdom while I raised your children. They're not mine," he snapped. Cersei's mouth froze. Her silence was all the answer he needed. "I won't kill you," Robert said, "and I won't kill the children, but I will remove you from power. You will return to Casterly Rock. Joffrey will be taken into my wardship. You think Tywin will allow that?" She whispered. "You think you'll live long enough to see it?" Robert stood. "I don't care if I die tomorrow, but I won't let you burn this kingdom because of pride." That night, Varys found Ned Stark in the God's Wood. "He will die," the spider said softly. "They will not allow him to live with this knowledge." "I know," Ned whispered, "but maybe he'll die a king, and not a butcher." But even Varys didn't know what Littlefinger had done next. He had hired a man, a quiet one with no banners, no loyalties. And that man was already on the road to Storm's End, where Robert planned to meet with Stannis, and where his enemies planned to end the king's peace forever. Storm's End was quiet, too quiet. The wind off Shipbreaker Bay howled like a warning, but Robert Baratheon didn't listen. He had ridden hard to meet his brother Stannis, hoping to speak of unity, of truth, of how they might hold the realm together without fire and swords. He was tired of bleeding for a throne that gave nothing back. The storm outside raged, but inside the castle's old stone walls, the true storm crept in silence. The assassin had already passed the gates, dressed as a stable hand, with eyes that never smiled. He said nothing, ate nothing. He had only one task, and a blade coated in pale, glistening poison. That night, Robert drank less than usual. His mind was heavy with politics, and brothers and children that weren't his. Stannis had listened, as always, with arms folded tight and judgment in his eyes. "They will never follow me," Robert muttered. "Even now, they'd rather back a boy with golden curls." "You should have killed the queen when you had the chance," Stannis replied coldly. "You're playing at mercy in a game that only rewards strength." "I'm tired of being strong," Robert said, not looking up. "I want peace. I want to die knowing the kingdom has a future." "You may get your wish," Stannis muttered. Later that night, the stable boy passed by Robert's chambers. He knocked once. No answer. He opened the door. Inside, Robert stood by the fire, back turned. The assassin slipped in quietly, blade ready. No sound but breath. But then, steel. The boy froze. Ned Stark stepped from the shadows, blade in hand. "I thought you looked out of place," Ned said calmly, "but I wanted to be sure." The assassin lunged, Too fast, too close. Ned wasn't in full armor, but he was still the sword of the North. The fight was brutal, fast and messy. The assassin was trained, precise. But Ned Stark fought like a wolf, with fury and loyalty. The blade slashed his arm, but not his throat. In the end, it was Robert's hammer that ended it. A single blow that shattered bone and blood. After, Ned knelt, bleeding, face pale. Robert sat beside him. "You saved my life," he whispered. "Again. You're not dying tonight," Ned said. "Not yet." But in the shadows they both knew peace was dying. Asterisk. In the north, Robb Stark stood in Winterfell's great hall reading the Raven's message. Assassination attempt on the king. War near the Trident. Lannister movements confirmed. Robb didn't wait for orders. He summoned bannermen from the Neck and the mountain clans. He sent riders to the Vale, asking for men if diplomacy failed. He was no longer just a lord's son. He stood tall like his father, but his eyes held a fire of their own. Maester Luwin watched him closely. "You are becoming a Stark," he said. "No," Robb said quietly. "I am a Stark, and if war comes, I won't wait for it to knock on our gates." And then came a raven from the wall. Short, urgent, panicked. Asterisk. Jon Snow had seen death before. He'd seen wildlings fall, and even his own brothers of the Night's Watch perish to cold or wounds. But what he saw that day wasn't death. It was something worse. The body of Ranger Othor had been found, frozen, stiff, blue-eyed, silent. They brought him back to Castle Black. But that night, he rose. Jon had been on duty, feeding Ghost, when the screaming started. He grabbed his blade and ran. The creature that was once Othor moved like a shadow, silent, cold. It killed a steward before Jon's sword caught its back, but steel did nothing. Ghost lunged, ripping into it, slowing it down. And then Jon saw the fire, the torches. He threw one with shaking hands, and the thing burned. Not like flesh, but like paper, like it wasn't meant to exist here anymore. After, Lord Commander Mormont called him in. "We need to send word south," Jon said. "This isn't just a story." Mormont nodded. "I will write to your father, but the South is burning itself alive. I fear they won't listen. But Ned Stark would." Asterisk. At Storm's End, the assassin's body was examined. No house, no crest, no name. But the poison. Maester Cresson identified it quickly. "The Strangler," he said grimly, "favored by certain whisperers, or men who want no trace." Robert clenched his fists. "Cersei." Ned shook his head. "She's many things, but Suffel isn't one of them." "No," Stannis said darkly. "This is someone who profits from war, not bloodlines." Littlefinger. Robert's jaw tightened. "Then I've let a snake into my court." Ned looked out the window toward the sea. "We need to move, Robert, before your enemies realize you survived." And from the north, ravens came. Jon Snow's letter. Robb's call to arms. The true war wasn't just against lions or gold. Something older had begun to wake, and Westeros was not ready. The raven flew like death across the sky. By the time it reached King's Landing, the sun had barely broken over the city. Maester Pycelle read the scroll twice before even daring to breathe. He shuffled, pale and shaking, into the council chamber, where Ned Stark was already waiting. The old man placed the letter on the table like it was made of wildfire. "From the wall," Pycelle croaked. "A resurrection. A dead man who walked, burned by fire, seen by Lord Snow." The room fell silent. Ned didn't speak. He read the message slowly, then again, and a third time as if the words might change. But they didn't. He looked up at Robert. "This is not a tale. It's a warning." Robert leaned back in his chair, eyes bloodshot but focused. "The dead rising. Is the North cursed, Ned? Or has your bastard been drinking snowmelt and dreaming?" But Ned's voice was calm. "He's not lying. He's seen something. And if we don't act now, there may be no realm left to fight over." Varys, quiet in the corner, finally spoke. "I have heard similar whispers in the free cities, in the haunted forests, even in the old books of Valyria. The long night may not be done with us, my lords." Robert stood up. "Then we call the lords, all of them. If I must wear this damned crown, they will listen. But one man didn't want them to listen. Littlefinger." He sat at the far end of the table, smirking. He had hoped to watch Robert fall to poison. When that failed, he had tried to frame Stannis, then Cersei, then even Tyrion, but nothing stuck. So now, he prepared to strike where it would hurt most. He called for Sansa Stark. Asterisk. Robb Stark had gathered near 4,000 men at Moat Cailin. The North had not marched in such numbers since the rebellion. Young lords followed him, Karstark, Umber, Manderley. They didn't see a boy. They saw the heir to the North. But Robb wasn't looking for glory. He was waiting for one thing: his father's raven. When it came, he read it aloud to his bannermen. "Hold your swords. Ride not for revenge, but for unity. I need you to stay strong, not for battle, but for the wall. Something worse is coming. Tell no one yet, but prepare your men. Lord Eddard Stark." Robb folded the letter, eyes dark with thought. He turned to his captains. "The Lannisters are not our greatest threat. The dead rise in the North, and if we fall into their trap now, we'll be blind when the true enemy comes." The lords muttered among themselves. The idea of war they understood. But the dead, that was old wives' talk. Still, they listened, because Robb Stark's voice carried the weight of 1,000 winters, and in secret he began preparing stores of food, mules for the wall, ravens to the night's watch offering aid. The North was awakening. Asterisk. In King's Landing, Sansa Stark was summoned to a beautiful garden at the Red Keep. Petyr Baelish met her there, dressed finely, his voice soft and charming. "You're looking more like a lady of court every day," he said. Sansa blushed, but didn't smile. "I know what you did," she said quietly. "To my father, to my mother. You lied. You stirred trouble. You want war." Littlefinger chuckled. "I want freedom, my sweet girl, from lions and wolves alike." He took a letter from his cloak. "I want you to deliver this to your father, personally. It concerns your sister, Arya." Sansa stared. "What about her?" He smiled. "Let's just say she's in danger, and only this letter can save her." Sansa didn't trust him, but he knew her weakness, her family, her fear, her love for Arya. She took the letter. Later that day, Ned read it. It claimed Arya had been taken by gold cloaks, loyal to Cersei, that she was being smuggled to the Westerlands, that the Queen was planning to use her as leverage, or worse. And Ned's hands shook. "We must find her," he told Robert. But Arya wasn't gone. She had only been practicing swordplay in the lower halls with Sir Rio Forel. The guards found her by nightfall, angry, sweaty, and entirely unharmed, and that's when Ned knew. Littlefinger had lied. Again. But it was different now. Now Robert believed Ned, and Robert wasn't a fool anymore. That night, the king ordered Baelish's arrest, but Littlefinger had already vanished. Far to the north, Jon Snow stood on the wall, watching the horizon. The forests were too quiet. He heard the crows before he saw the shapes. 3 rangers returned that day, 2 injured, 1 dead. not just dead, turned, blue-eyed, cold. And this time it wasn't just John who saw it. Half the Night's Watch stood witness as the dead ranger rose in the cold light of dawn and screamed. Fire took it down again, but fear had settled into every man's bones. Mormont sent another raven. This one bore no pleasantries, only 3 words: "They are coming." King's Landing was burning, not with fire, but fear. Littlefinger's betrayal had finally surfaced in full. The moment Robert signed the order for his arrest, Petyr Baelish vanished like a wisp of smoke. The gold cloak searched every alley, every whorehouse, every hidden tunnel of the Red Keep, but he was gone. Some whispered he was in the Fingers. Others claimed he'd fled to the Vale. But Varys had a different idea. "He's not hiding," the spider told Ned. "He's gathering." "What?" Ned frowned. "Chaos is his ladder, Lord Stark," Varys said grimly. "He's been climbing it for years. He won't stop now, not until he reaches the top." And then the raven came, delivered straight to Robert, sealed with wax, gold, with the mockingbird sigil burned deep. Inside, a single sentence: "You can keep your throne, Robert. I'll take the realm. Robert, I'll—" The next day, reports came flooding in. In the Westerlands, bannermen not loyal to Tywin Lannister were turning to Petyr Baelish, lured by promises of coin, land, and a new order where cunning beat bloodlines. But worse, Baelish had done something no one expected. He had aligned with House Hightower, the ancient, calculating rulers of Old Town. Never loud, never ambitious, had suddenly pledged troops to Littlefinger's cause. Why? Because Baelish promised them power through trade, gold, and independence from the Iron Throne. With them came whispers of the Citadel itself being compromised, maesters choosing sides, knowledge becoming weaponized. Baelish didn't need armies. He needed secrets, and he had them all. Robert slammed his fist against the war table. "We should have killed him 10 years ago. We didn't see him," Ned muttered. "None of us did." Robert looked at Ned. "We end this. We end him. No more delays. I ride to the Trident. You ride north. Ready the wall. If the dead are rising, we'll need every man breathing. And if war breaks out while we're apart," Robert grinned bitterly, "then we'll see who bleeds more. Pisha's spies or Tywin's pride." Storish. In the north, Robb Stark received his father's raven under the pale morning sky. His fingers tightened around the parchment. Littlefinger, Hightower. The realm splitting not in 2, but in 4. He turned to Lord Umber. "Send riders to the wall. Tell them Robb Stark will come with men and supplies. Your father said to wait." Robb's voice hardened. "And I've waited, but the dead don't." The north began to march. 2,000 men, silent, cold, and fast. Not for conquest, not for glory, for the wall. At Castle Black, Jon Snow trained harder than ever. The terror from the last attack hadn't left anyone. Even the old rangers were shaken. The dead thing they burned still haunted their dreams. Ghost had begun to snarl at the trees. Jon stood with Samwell Tarly, looking at the frost-bitten forest. "They're out there," Jon whispered, "watching, waiting." Sam shivered. "Do you think they know we're coming?" Jon looked down at his sword. Still just castle-forged steel, not dragonglass, not Valyrian. "We're not ready," he said, "but we can't wait." Lord Commander Mormont called him into his chambers that night. "We ride at dawn," Mormont said. 20 rangers. You'll be among them." Jon nodded, no fear in his eyes. "Why me?" he asked. "Because you're already half dead," Mormont said. "And you've come back stronger." "It you, then." Far away in the Vale, Catelyn Stark met with Lysa again. But this time it was different. Lysa had grown bolder, sharper. The Vale had remained quiet through all the realm's chaos, but now Petyr had begun whispering to her too. "He says you left me," Lysa hissed at Catelyn. "Left me to rot in this high castle while you play Queen of the North." "Petyr lies," Catelyn said coldly. "He always has." But Lysa's face twisted into a smile. "Then why does he know about the Targaryen girl in the east? Why does he know about the dragons?" Catelyn froze. What dragons? And that's when she understood. Baelish wasn't playing for Westeros alone. He was playing for everything, Astarish. In the east, across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen stood barefoot in the red sands of Essos, a hatchling dragon resting on her shoulder. She had received a raven too, from a man named Petyr Baelish. He offered her ships, spies, and gold. She offered him nothing, but she kept the letter, because it reminded her that her time was coming, and Westeros would burn. Tisdorif. As dawn broke over Castle Black, Jon Snow rode through the opened gate, 20 brothers at his side. Beyond the wall, the forest waited. Dead things moved beneath the snow. But Jon Snow did not look back, because whatever lived in the darkness, he would face it. And maybe, just maybe, stop it. The world changed beyond the wall. Jon Snow felt it the moment they crossed deep into the frozen forest. The air grew heavier, colder than winter itself. Even their breaths seemed afraid to rise. Horses snorted nervously. Men whispered prayers. They reached the fist of the first men by nightfall. Ancient stones lay broken, half buried in snow. Old bones whispered of wars long forgotten. Mormont ordered camp, but Jon couldn't sleep. Ghost growled. Mo. Constant. Then the snow began to move. At first it looked like wind. Then it stood up. Hundreds. No, thousands. Dead men. Dead women. Dead animals. Frozen faces. Blue eyes, burning like cold stars. The Night King stood among them. Tall, pale, silent. And he raised his hand. The dead charged. Fire exploded. Torches flew. Oil burned. Men screamed. Jon fought like he never had before. His sword cut through bodies that felt like ice. They didn't bleed. They didn't fall easily. Sam stabbed one with dragon glass. It shattered into dust. "They can die!" Sam shouted. "They can die." Hope spread, but not fast enough. Half the Rangers fell in minutes. Mormont roared orders, bleeding from his head. Retreat, back to the wall. They ran. Jon turned back once. He saw the Night King watching. Not angry, not afraid, smiling. At dawn, broken survivors staggered back through Castle Black's gates. Jon collapsed in the snow. "We're not ready," he was. "We'll never be ready." But then horns sounded from the south. Robb Stark had arrived. 2,000 Northmen stood behind him. Wagons of food, weapons, dragon blasts from Dragonstone, thick cloaks, fresh horses. Robb dismounted and embraced Jon. "You're not alone," he said. "Not anymore." "For the first time," Jon cried, "in the Riverlands, war finally met its end." Robert Baratheon and Ned Stark rode at the head of 20,000 men. Stark, Baratheon, Tully, Arryn. Tully, Arryn. Against them stood Tywin Lannister and Petyr Baelish's mixed army. Sellswords. Traitors bought loyalty. The Battle of the Trident was fierce. Steel rang. Horses screamed. Rivers turned red. Robert fought like the old days, hammer swinging, roaring like thunder. Ned fought with calm precision, protecting his men. Tywin's lines held, until Littlefinger betrayed him. At the height of battle, Baelish ordered his hired troops to withdraw. Tywin's flank collapsed. "Traitor!" Tywin shouted, but it was too late. Robert smashed through the line. Ned cornered Littlefinger near the riverbank. Pater was smiling even then. "You needed chaos," he said. "I gave it to you." "And you'll pay for it," Ned replied. Littlefinger tried to run. He didn't make it 3 steps. Ice ended his climb. Tywin surrendered. The war was over. Before it truly began, in King's Landing, Robert called a great council. All houses, all voices. He stood thinner now, older, wiser. "I was a bad king," he admitted, "but I won't be a foolish one anymore." He named Stannis as heir. Ned remained hand. Cersei and her children were sent to Casterly Rock, alive, unharmed. No revenge, no blood, only consequences. Then Jon's ravens arose. About the Night King, about the army of dead, about extinction. The council fell silent. Daenerys Targaryen arrived weeks later with 3 grown dragons. She came not as a conqueror, but as an ally. "I will fight," she said, "or everything burns." Robert laughed weakly. "Figures. The girl with dragons saves us." The final battle came at Winterfell. Living versus dead. Fire and ice. Dragons in the sky. Giants of bone. Jon led the front. Robb guarded the flanks. Ned commanded. Robert fought. Daenerys burned. When Jon faced the Night King, sword shaking, heart racing, he remembered who he was. A Stark, a Snow, a shield. With dragon glass in hand, he struck. The Night King shattered. The dead fell. Silence followed. Spring came. Slowly, peace followed. Carefully, Robert ruled wisely until his death. Stannis continued. Ned returned north. Robb became warden. Jon became Lord Commander. And legend. Daenerys ruled the east, allied to Westeros. No mad kings, no burning cities, no broken realm. Because once, free people chose wisdom over pride. Ned, Catelyn, Robert. And Westeros survived.